Hello everyone and welcome back to Football Forecast, and today's going to be going through my transfer roundup for this week, as well as talking about transfers that may happen in the coming days as well as the coming months. So starting off with Antoine Semenyo to Manchester City, and look, Semenyo is a top player and he is a good purchase by City, but my concern for the player is, will he actually be picked in the starting lineup consistently, or will he be another Calvin Phillips or be another Jack Grealish? I also don't think the fit was as good as a club like Arsenal, for example. I thought he was the perfect left winger for Arsenal to go and pick up. I think he does everything that Martinelli does in terms of the work rate, but I think he's a lot more effective going forwards, and he would have been excellent for that Arsenal system. I think that would have been Semenyo's best fit in terms of play style as well as availability and being able to play in the side. I think sides like Chelsea, Liverpool and Man United would have liked a player like Antoine Semenyo because he is a top winger. So then we're on to the next player, and the next player I'll be discussing is Brennan Johnson to Crystal Palace. I think quite a few Spurs players are disappointed and sad to see Brennan Johnson leave the club, and that was because he had that great moment in the Europa League. But in reality, he's probably not good enough to be a Spurs winger, and getting £30 million from him is probably good business for Spurs. I think he has the potential to be a good player in that Oliver Glasner system. He's a quick player and he knows where the back of the net is. My concern for him is I don't think he's going to start for Crystal Palace because I can't see him getting in over Sarr once he comes back from AFCON. The next signing I want to talk about is Cancelo to Barcelona. I think this is a really good deal. It hasn't quite been confirmed yet, but I think this is actually a really good piece of business. They get him in on loan, and it should be a reasonably cheap deal to do because it's only a loan fee, it looks like. And he's got the ability to play as a left back and a right back. And this is crucial for a side like Barcelona, which are lacking depth. Now, my only concern is that the fact that it looks like they won't be getting a centre-half, and I think that was more of a priority. But what you could do is you can play Cancelo at right back. That means Eric Garcia doesn't have to fill in at right back anymore. He can just play as a centre-half. And it also means you could potentially play Koundé as the right centre-half if no centre-half is fit, or you want to give one of the centre-halves a rest. And as I said, he's good cover for Balde at left-back. So overall, I think it's a good piece of business. I think what would make this piece of business better is if they got a centre-half as well as doing this deal. I think this was a sort of player that a lot of clubs should be looking at. I think a club like Liverpool could even be looking at a player like João Cancelo and should have been looking at a player like João Cancelo. It's not the most Liverpool piece of business to do, but Liverpool have been struggling so far this season with right-back depth. And I don't think Liverpool would have wanted to buy a right back. So what you could have done is you could have just loaned one in. And I think this would have been clever considering Bradley, Gomez and Frimpong so far have been pretty injury prone. And this would also allow you to play Frimpong up the pitch. So then the next couple of signings I want to talk about is from one club, and that is West Ham. They have sold Nicholas Fulkrog and brought in Tate Castelos and Pablo in for a combined £50 million. Some expensive business to do so far. And I think what frustrates West Ham fans about this is, first of all, it looks increasingly likely West Ham are going to get relegated. I think they will go down. And I think what's so frustrating is that the West Ham owners kept saying we don't have the money there to spend, or it's not available, or we can't spend it. And now they've straight away in January gone and dropped £50 million on two players. This must be so frustrating because it first of all means they've been lying to you the whole time, which is no surprise with the owners West Ham have. But they're also leaving it too late, and they're only doing this because they're worried about losing money because they've potentially been relegated from the Premier League. That's why the money's only now become available. In reality, West Ham need to spend a lot of money in the summer, and they failed to do this, and this is why they're most likely going to go down. I think this is really poor from the West Ham owners. And you potentially say, oh, that's a reason now to spend. No, spend it originally, so then you get to have those players for the whole season, and you first of all give yourself way more of a chance of staying up. And second of all, you can finish even higher up the table. This is the same problem that Wolves have had, and finally Wolves have fallen into the trap, and that's why they're going to get relegated. Because every season what Wolves do is they sell a couple of players and they have a transfer budget available. They don't spend it, and then in January they hope to bail themselves out if they are in a relegation spot. And this year Wolves are going to fail to do this because they're so far adrift. So now we're just on to some potential transfers that could happen in this window. So the first one we've got is Mark Gahey potentially leaving the club. And Crystal Palace have said that he will be allowed to leave the club in January if a deal can be agreed. And obviously Liverpool are interested in this. But the club I think that should be really interested in a player like Mark Gahey is Chelsea. The one thing Chelsea lack right now is experience at centre-half, and they could really do with a player like Mark Gahey. I think he comes in and shores up that defence, which at points this season has been rather weak. I think that's what they need. They need a keeper, centre-halves and the wingers. And fairness, Sanchez has been alright this season, but that's what Chelsea need. They need centre-halves, and I think they could really use a player like Gahey. Unfortunately, with the transfer strategy of Blue Coat, it looks unlikely they will go for a player like Mark Gahey, but I really think they need to look into a player like this. As well as this, he is actually a potential player that they could make a potential profit on if that is the goal with Clearlake, because you could sign him for about £30 million, £35 million, and then you could definitely sell him if you wanted to for £50 million. He's that sort of player, and the reason why he's so cheap right now is because he's out of contract in 6 months, and I really think they should look into this, especially if Semenyo wants to play a 3 at the back, because he is very comfortable in a 3 at the back system. We've seen him play at a 3 at the back at Crystal Palace. And then looking at some other options, Liverpool, of course, interested in Mark Gahey. I think they should go and do this because they need a backup centre-half, or at least a centre-half that can compete with Canate. And I don't think he'd be a backup at Liverpool. I think he would definitely start over Canate. And Liverpool are desperate for depth. And it will come down to will the players still want to join Liverpool. Then we've got Manchester City. A City looking at Gahey, I think, because currently they're struggling with centre-half depth. I think he could go into there and 100% start for that Manchester City side. I think he's good enough to get in over either Vardiel or Ruben Diaz, so I think he wouldn't have a problem with starting for Manchester City. I think he should look into that properly. The other club that seems interested is Arsenal. Now, if I'm Mark Gahey, I'm going nowhere near Arsenal, because first of all, you're 100% a third choice and a half, because Gabriel and Saliba, you're not starting ahead of Gabriel Saliba. It's that simple. They're two of the best centre-halves in the league, and it's incredibly unlikely he gets in. So for me, I'd go nowhere near Arsenal. If he potentially goes on a free, I think someone like a Real Madrid should definitely be looking at Mark Gahey, because so far Huijsen is struggling and being dropped. Asensio seems like a very inconsistent centre-half for Real Madrid. I don't think he's at the standard to play for Real Madrid. Eder Militao is very injury-prone, and Rudiger is looking like he may potentially even leave Real Madrid at some point, and also he's not the player he once was. So I 100% think Gahey would actually start for Real Madrid. So I think that is a genuine option for him to go to Real Madrid. Now it looks like they're not interested in Canate because he hasn't been performing so far this season. Another option is Bayern Munich. I don't think he would end up at Bayern Munich because it looks like Upamecano is going to renew a contract, and I think if this happens, then I don't know if I would go to Bayern Munich because I'm not sure if I'd be guaranteed to start for them. I think another club that could really use a player like Gahey, this would have to be on a free, would be Barcelona. If Barcelona can find a way to get Mark Gahey, that'd be a brilliant piece of business. So overall, the clubs I think they need him the most. The two in England, I think, is Liverpool and Chelsea are desperate for Mark Gahey. I think his best option could be to go to City, because I still think he can get in that City defence over a Ruben Diaz or a Vardiel potentially. That would be a bit risky, but it'd be a great option for him. Maybe he feels like if he goes to Liverpool, he can shore up that defence and that will make them into a top side. I still think that would be a big option. I think he's unlikely to go to Chelsea because it just feels a bit like a circus right now. But he did come through at Chelsea, so that may persuade him to go there. Abroad, I think Spain is a good option for Mark Gahey. I think he could get in the Real Madrid and Barca side, and I think both sides would definitely take a player like him. A lot of the side will come down to Upamecano and Canate's situation at both clubs in terms of who, if they renew there or if they go somewhere else, and the situation of Stones' contract at Manchester City. So the final player I want to discuss, and there's been some rumours around this player recently, is Vinicius Jr. And I think this is pretty good for all parties if Vinicius Jr. leaves. I think for Real Madrid, the balance of the side is better if Vinicius Jr. is not part of it, and you've only got one of him or Mbappe, and I think that allows you to move Mbappe out to left wing, and then you go sign a world-class striker with a Vinicius Jr. fee. And that is the problem. The amount they would demand for a player like Vinicius Jr. would be extortionate, and understandably so, because he's such a talent. But I actually think for his career, it may be better, because I think he'd actually perform better as sort of being the main man at the club, or one of the main men. Right now, it appears to be Mbappe and Bellingham, and Vinicius Jr. is sort of the player that seems like he's struggling because of this. So I think he should really consider leaving. One of the options, as usual, is Chelsea. But as I said already, Chelsea have spent an extortionate amount of money on Barragán and Garnacho, so it's unlikely they can afford or will buy a player like this. Liverpool's another option, but they've spent a lot of money this summer. I do think that could be a possible destination, or Liverpool might look at someone like a Rodrigo or someone like Arsenal may have a look. I can't see him leaving Vinicius Jr., but I actually think for everyone this would probably be the best outcome in terms of Vinicius Jr.'s success in the future, as well as for Real Madrid in terms of getting balance into that starting lineup. Just one more deal which I've actually just seen is Marcus Rashford looks like he will stay at Barcelona and leave Manchester United at the end of the season. I think this would be good for all parties. I don't think he'll be the same player he is right now at Barcelona at Manchester United, because I think he's struggling to succeed at that environment, and I think he's struggling to deal with the pressure. At Barcelona, there's a lot less spotlight on him because he's not Mr. Manchester United like he is at United. And when he comes back to United, if he did, all the pressure would be on Rashford and for him to perform. And overall, Manchester United get a decent fee from him, and Barcelona get a top quality player when he's on form. Let me know your thoughts on these potential transfers, as well as my thoughts around the transfers that have already happened. And if you enjoy this video, go subscribe to the channel, as well as liking the video.